There we go. A little better. Okay. Morning. Coffee. Uh, I try to make these videos as short as possible for viewership. So oftentimes that um, compromises my ability to lay out a lot of evidence or citation. And sometimes I kind of move through these points very quickly. So I apologize about that. The point is to give you a generalization of the paradigm or the contention, and then from you to go and research that on your own and see where that takes you. And the reason I say that is no more is that the case than in this video, where I have so much to go over that I will be moving very quickly and probably not laying out as much evidence and citation as I'd like to. So if you have questions I have or want to argue the points, I'd love to. I have very few followers. If you get in contact with me either through here or Twitter, I will get in contact with you right away. So we can go from there, because it is an intriguing subject. I think this is the reason I have so much to go over is because there's so preponderance of evidence supporting my claim that Kennedy is nothing to be revered at all, and it's just kind of sickening how much it's kind of a given that this is the one president in the 20th century, or maybe since the beginning of time, that has ever done anything for the country. And I challenge you to sit down with a pen and paper and write down what you love about this man, and especially in terms of policy, because I don't know what he did. I know the two things that we point to the most, and I'm going to deal with those head on. But for the most part, I think it'd be a real challenge for you to sit down with pen and paper and really write down what you loved about this gentleman. But let's get to the points right away. Let's start with his father. A nefarious character, to say the least. Basically, he's an Al Capone type figure. He's what you call, they call him a rum runner, but they make it very kind of jazzed and socially acceptable in terms of Kennedy's father, Joe Kennedy, versus Al Capone. There's a lot of just darkness associated in the narrative of Al Capone, but generally they were doing the same thing. They were making tons of money on an illegal product, distributing it, and that involved all kinds of things like probably murder or gang violence, extortion, and that all goes in the game. But for some reason, Joe Kennedy, probably because of the area that he was in, was able to sort of keep, as a climber, a social climber. And basically what I'm trying to say is nobody out of Capone's family, first generation, was going to be in politics. But certainly Kennedy's did, which is fascinating since they were essentially kind of the same career path. Moving forward from there, you look at where he did his schooling, and his schooling was the London School of Economics. And the London School of Economics is the principal heart school of the Fabian economic movement, which is social democracy, or social democrats, if you will, socialistic democrats. And what is socialistic democracy? It's very debatable, but the basic tenets of it is globalism. It is having a centralized bureaucracy, state entity that controls at least the most vital aspects of society, because they cannot be trusted within the brutish, stupid creatures that we are, basically. To what extent that is been the debate between, from Marx on. But essentially, this is what that School of Economics teaches. And you don't go to this school, you don't just get a scholarship because you're on the Wisconsin basketball team and I want to go to London. No, you were chosen probably from birth to go to this school. It is like, Yale Skull and Bones type thing. This is where you are garnished and created to be a world leader and possibly a president, as it was in Kennedy's case. So you have to deal with that situation, that he comes from a Fabian school, a Rockefeller school, so on and so forth. He comes from a globalist agenda of being able to treat the population as something that needs to be ruled over, and using as their central instrument the labor force, especially in England, where they use the Labour Party, always using the backs of the laborers and the workers to create their revolutions and their financing and obviously their votes, if you will. So it's fascinating to look at that in itself. And for those of you who, all of us, have our own bone to pick with the Vatican, I mean, we could stand here for the next 20 minutes and talk about all the places where the Vatican has stuck its ugly head and made a menace on human society, mostly by putting collectivist groups against each other, whether it's religions or nations. And so every one of us already has a bone to pick with the Vatican and the Catholic government. But this is the very first Catholic president ever in history of America. He is the Vatican. Okay, he's Irish Catholic, which, if you know anything about how the Irish Catholic got here in the beginning of the 20th century, it is exactly what they're saying the Islamics are doing in Europe, in the sense that it was a Jesuit-led mission to create an unstable war situation in Ireland where people were being genocide, and get the Catholics into America to fight the Protestant ethic that was taking place in America. So, knowing that, you have to deal with that as well, that he is a Catholic, a proud Catholic, a member of the Vatican. And maybe the only one, unless you consider 45, our recent president, also a member of the Catholic Church, which he is a Jesuit. He went to a Jesuit school. He's been a Jesuit all his life. Jesuits in the Vatican, you know the story. I don't see how this is not another case of another Vatican nominee right here. So, already we're off to a really, really bad start. And then you start into the very beginnings of his presidency, and you have, within the first 4 months of his inauguration, you have him working with Eleanor Roosevelt, who is always within the ranks of the Kennedys. The Roosevelts and the Kennedys go hand in hand. And I should have started this video, and I'll have to stop here, and I apologize for digressing really quick. But most of this theory is a conglomerate of both, it's kind of hard. I think his name is actually Dallas Goldbug. His website is wellaware1, the number 1.com, wellaware1.com. His YouTube channel seems to be Dallas Goldbug, as far as I can follow it. And then as well, the author of The Monster from the Jekyll Island. I always want to call him G. Gordon Liddy, and that's not his name, but his name is, really quick, I do want to pay homage to him because he is one of the best researchers around still, and I am talking about, oh geez. Well, most of you are familiar with the book, of course. I'm sorry for the mind freeze on not being able to, oh, here we go. G. Edward Griffin. I apologize. Anyways, G. Edward Griffin. And I have to make note of that because I have to take you a little bit back here. If you know about the Roosevelts, the central theme behind my theory is that the entire 20th century has been nothing but a stage act, has been nothing but a movie filled with actors, and the actors mostly play government roles, while the hidden powers behind them are American industrialists and Western industrialists, mostly corporations, if you will. And it's been sort of the same elite corporate families that have ruled over the last 2 centuries. And I think a quick evidence of this that I always point to is if you look at Nazi Germany, no Nazi, Goebbels, Hitler, Nazi youth, nobody built the Autobahn, nobody built the railroads that led to the concentration camps and everything you know about that. Okay, those were the Harriman brothers. Nobody built the that's Ford. These are the industrialists. The Western capitalists built that country, that industrial nation, and put everything into play against us, and you know this, okay? So, because I know this, the capitalists are playing actors against us, basically. And so Hitler is thought to be Disney, and there's plenty of evidence for this if you go look at it. While his brother Roy Disney is obviously Gable, his right-hand man. And if you don't believe this, always look at the wives. The wives are the telling part, but there's plenty of evidence. So if that's true, where that starts is through Roosevelt. The theory is that Roosevelt had a son that died at the age of 26 named Kermit Roosevelt. Kermit Roosevelt then later took on many roles. There's a couple roles he took on before Hitler and Disney, okay? But he basically faked his death in the British Army, fighting for the British Air Force for some reason, which makes no sense in itself, at the age of 26. If that story's true, and Roosevelt is all over Kennedy, then think about that for a second, okay? But within 4 months, he's already doing initiatives with her. They do the Peace Corps, which, essentially could be a Nazi youth organization in itself, but that's debatable, whatever. After that, the very next thing that happens is the Bay of Pigs. To get the real story of the Bay of Pigs, I don't know. The history says that it was his order to do it. but he didn't provide the air coverage to get the job done. So basically, he put, I assume, our CIA agents or our agents, operatives, as well as revolutionaries from Cuba, told them to put themselves in harm's way, and then didn't give them the support to get the option done, and basically created a false flag within 4 months of his inauguration to create this Cold War into a, to really push the Cold War there. Okay. Right after that comes to our first point. One of the things that people like to point to all the time is this incredible speech. It's called The President and the Press. And I really urge you to read this in its entirety. Most of the time when you hear it on a video, it's cut right to the middle where he starts talking about secret societies, using the actual word secret societies, and it's poised as he is talking about, whatever, Illuminati, secret societies within America. And it's just so not the case, so out of context, and yet so many of us believe this within our community that it's embarrassing, to be honest with you. If you read the context of that, it's very early on in his presidency. He's talking to the press, and he's asking the press to be on his side. And he says, look, we've got two missions. You've got to be very informative and tell the American public what we need to tell them about the Russian threat. And he's very specific about that. And your second option is that you can't keep giving them secrets. You can't keep reporting on what I'm doing because the Russians are getting our secrets. He says that blatantly, that the Russians are reported not needing an intelligence operation because they just get it from you guys, the press. So he's basically telling the press to shut up. And when he's talking about secret societies, he's talking about McCarthyistic sort of type of things, where he's talking about communistic subterfuge groups within America and within our media that are, getting our information. And if you think about this, and you think about whether it's Clinton or Bush or even 45 today, that's essentially what they always tell the press is quit leaking my information. Why would you tell the press to not report it? Like, we don't, and they always say national security and it's treason. It's not treason. You're just telling the press to shut up. That's all you're doing. And to be on your side, and you try to make him a buddy. And if you read the cadence of this, I just told you about how he slaughtered his own operatives, and within weeks he's talking about that. He's using that as the example to tell them, listen, we just saw what happened. We can't let that happen again. And he's doing it in this really joking, confident manner, like he doesn't care that he killed some people about it. So you go read that speech and you tell me if he's talking about the Illuminati or if he's telling the press to shut up and to get on board and tell people that Russia is an imminent threat. That's what's going on there, okay? Moving on from there, the second thing that everyone wants to point to is his executive order 101111. Interesting number, by the way. And supposedly this is where he was trying to end the Fed, okay? Nobody is reading this order. I don't know what you guys are thinking. Before this amendment, okay, the only person that had control over the precious metal reserve, how much precious metal we're to reserve as a country, and how much of that is to be on the backs of the actual money, whether it's supported or actually on the money, the only person that was to decide that, the only power came to the president. That's what the Constitution wanted, that power to be solely within that man. And what President Kennedy did in Executive Order 10111 is he gave that power to the treasurer. And the treasurer was a man by the name of Mr. Dillon. And if you know anything about the Dillon family in the early 20th century, then you'll know about Robert Mueller of today, because it goes through his mom and how they go way back to Nazi Germany. I'm digressing. Dillon was a central banker. And so basically, they took that power of ensuring that we would always have precious metal reserves and gave it to the bankers. Okay? Instead of the Constitution. That was one of his first things he did. And if you don't believe me, go read the directive yourself. But go ahead and read Economic Advisory 1963 that Kennedy has out there. Economic Advisory 1963. You should be able to look it up just like that. Or go look at James Corbett's report on the Corbett Report. One of the best guys out there right now. Hands down. Okay, next to the first two that I mentioned. But, I mean, there's some things I'd like Corbett to deal with. But anyways, if you watch his report on it, it's very blatantly true that in that advisory, he's telling Congress to get silver out of the money supply. He specifically says there's no value for silver within the money supply. And his next step would be gold, meaning he wants metal out. He wants fiat money. He's feeding the Federal Reserve notion of globalist back to the Fabian economic school of understanding Hegelian. I mean, this is where Hegelian dialectics comes from, is from this school of thought. It's like, give you guys enough problems, and we're going to be the socialistic answer for it. Okay, got to end this pretty quick, so I've got so many more examples that I can give you. If you think about, and me as a flat earther, this is what intrigued me about WellAware1.com's research more than anything, is that every flat earther out there is always talking about Disney and NASA, the creation of NASA, and Project Paperclip, and these things all come together in these pictures, and nobody can explain what the hell they're coming together for. Well, if Hitler is Disney, Project Paperclip makes a whole lot of sense, the creation of NASA makes a whole lot of sense, and who was behind that? Yeah, Kennedy. Yeah, who faked the moon landing? Yeah, Kennedy. Who faked the Cold War? Yeah, if the nuclear bomb is fake, who's faking it more than anyone? Yeah, Kennedy. Okay? Who has... You're mad at Kushner? You're mad at Kushner, but you're not mad at Bobby Kennedy. Go look at cabinet pictures of Kennedy. There is no cabinet. It's only Bobby Kennedy in the White House every single day, and you love him for some reason, too. I don't know why. Go ahead and get that paper and pen and figure out why you love Bobby Kennedy so much, okay? They're hoaxes. They're hoaxes. Look at their deaths. The Zapruder Frume has been proven to be an absolute fake. Okay? Oliver Stone's movie tore me up as an 18-year-old. That final speech was amazing. Absolute disinformation. He lived, probably. We know this. It's a fake. It's all a fake. He is not your white messiah. This is yet another case of there not being a white messiah. Okay? All right. Thanks.